Hello and welcome back to Dynamic Digital World. Today we are going to be talking about the Galaxy Z Fold 7, the Galaxy Watch 8 series. We're going to be talking about WWDC, Google I/O, and of course the UK's Online Safety Act. Now the UK's Online Safety Act will be at the very end of the video, the reason being I want to get through the standard techniques before I get to issues with the Online Safety Act. We will also touch on the T-App scandal in terms of the fact that was leaked, but apart from that we will not be talking about it. So, without further ado, my name is Luke, let's get started. So let's start with Galaxy Unpacked, the most recent tech event that has kind of happened. So let's start with the Watch 8 series. The biggest change is definitely the design language. It's not really anything else with the exception of software, which we'll go over later. They've moved into a squircle design that then has the circular screen on top of it. So on the Galaxy Watch Ultra from last year we saw the first iteration of this, where they basically took the squircle design of an Apple Watch, but then they kept the circular design of Samsung watches as the user interface that you would use. I quite like it actually. I think it sits a bit better on my wrist than just a circular watch in some ways, especially for like sensor tracking and stuff. I think it just works better. I feel like I've had better contact compared to my previous Galaxy watches, and I think it's worked really well. So I think whilst it is a big change, it might be a little bit better, although with the Classic line also returning, it's definitely a bigger change for the Classic line, because the entire idea of the Classic is that it looks and feels very much like a classic watch, where you have a bezel and it's so to see them go for a squircle underneath the circle is a very interesting design choice. But apart from that, there are going to be some slight improvements to performance. The base Watch 8 is also 11% slimmer compared to previous versions, and they now use what's known as a dynamic lug system for the watch straps. So unfortunately that does mean that most pins won't work. That being said, this is kind of to be expected. Google and Apple have done the same thing in terms of getting rid of the pins. So we were going to see Samsung follow through on that at some point. It was nice to see them use the built-in, the kind of standard default one, but you can't anymore. Of course, you can always, if you choose to, buy a different strap that uses a pin. There are a few straps on their website that use pins. So if you were to buy those, then you can use any watch strap you like as well. But obviously that's very expensive to do compared to just being built in. In terms of performance, both devices, the Galaxy Watch 8 and the Watch 8 Classic, use the Exynos W1000 processor and are equipped with 2GB of RAM. The Classic has one step up from the Galaxy Watch 8 in that it offers up to 64GB of internal storage. The regular Galaxy Watch 8 is about 32GB from what I have seen so far. So yeah, that's the primary difference. Yes, as said, the storage is 32GB, with the available storage being 20.3GB. There is a difference, of course, between storage given to you and storage available to you. But again, you wouldn't notice that in day-to-day use that existed. So the Galaxy Watch Classic is not designed to take on days on end. It has a battery of 445 mAh, not bad, but not what the Watch Ultra can do. Obviously, not expected to be. The Watch Ultra is meant to be one that can handle days on end, days at a time. There are multiple health suite improvements. So GPS sensors in the watch have been improved for better accuracy, with the new running coach feature that is going to be more capable. There's also bedtime guidance and vascular load measurement, so they can measure if your body is doing too much throughout the day. It's very interesting to see, and we'll see how that kind of works. So that's kind of for Watch 8 and Watch 8 Classic. So the Watch 8 has a base price of $349 US. Although currently that is down to $300 US, they're currently $50 US off on that. And when you look at the Galaxy Watch 8 on the UK store, it starts at £320. So basically currency conversion, like there's not much difference there outside of currency conversion, I don't think. And that can actually, however, it can go down to £274 for the Galaxy Watch 8 in the UK if you go for a graphite colour, whereas there is definitely only $300 currently for the non-graphite, for the graphite in the USA. So overall, similar pricing across both. So yeah, there's not much difference between the two, as I say. And then the Watch 8 Classic itself, that starts from £400 in the UK, and it appears as though, according to prices I can see, because I can't really check that one myself very well, unfortunately, $499 US. So not terrible pricing, not bad pricing. And the Galaxy Watch Ultra also has a new variant in the titanium blue colourway for the same price of $649. The UK pricing has again stayed the same as it was, say, for the US pricing. So that's the Watch 8 and Watch 8 Classic, as well as the tiny update that exists to Watch Ultra. So yeah, all watches currently have $50 US off by the looks of what I can see on here, so please be aware that prices may go up by about $50 US compared to what I'm saying here. Now, as for the Fold and Flip 7, these are impressive devices, I'd say. The Fold 7 is said to be the thinnest of all foldable devices at the minute. We don't know for sure, there's no certain guarantee. It depends on testing methodology, and we'll have to see once more people have it in their hands. But the Z Fold 7 is amazing from what people are saying. The biggest problem with the Z Fold 7 is that it currently costs $2,000 US, assuming there are no discounts available. Now, for it to be $2,000 is a price jump. It's a significant price jump. It used to be about $1,800 US, and that's gone up by $200. So, see, that price increase is a big price increase, especially compared to what, again, we've seen in the past. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, when you go on to the Samsung site here in the UK, go on to the Z Fold 7 website, you can get a Z Fold 7 for £1,799, which probably does just about come up as equal by comparison. In fact, I'm fairly certain is equivalent by comparison. But the point remains that £2,000 is going to be a steep price when the biggest change is that it's thinner with a slightly bigger front cover screen and an internal display, both of which are massive improvements, but I will say the aspect ratio of the front display is now more similar to a standard mobile phone, so should have less cut-offs on the side for apps that are not optimized for foldables. And of course, a bigger inner display is always an improvement, although it does now have a touch hole front-facing camera again on the inner display. They've decided to stop the under-display camera from being used, which is good for vehicles because the quality was not great. So it's a great foldable. It seems to be great, and it does seem to be, people seem to think it's the best foldable they can buy. We'll see how well it sells, but for now, it looks pretty good. As for the Flip 7, not too much has changed with the Flip 7. It's thinner, again, they've done some thinness improvements, and the front cover display is now full size, so it actually wraps around the cameras, which is an interesting decision. We'll have to hope that Samsung optimised software for that, and we'll see what they do. But I don't want to talk about one drawback of the Z Fold 7 quickly, which is just that they've got rid of the S Pen. I'm a big S Pen user on my Fold. It works so well. I like it a lot. So I'm not a huge fan of features going away. I understand in the pursuit of thinness something has to be removed, and when you have to remove the physical digitizer to make it thin enough, it's going to happen. And Samsung have said it could come back in a future one, but I don't think it's going to happen personally. You look at kind of how they've been doing things with the S Pen, and it just kind of looks like it might not stay. So yeah, but the trade-off, you can definitely see it being worth it, making it more pocketable, easier for most people to hold. So that is Samsung Unpacked. We've got a Watch 8 and a Watch 8 Classic. Just steady improvements from the year before. They seem to look great. We've got the Fold 7 and the Flip 7, both steady improvements. Oh, also, I forgot to mention last year's Flip 6 is now the Flip 7 SE, so that also exists now. It's on a slightly cheaper price, but it's not great. I'll be honest with you, I don't know if it's worth it. So, all in all, that is Samsung Unpacked. Now let's talk about WWDC, aka Apple's new naming scheme. Now, starting off with WWDC, the first thing I'm going to say is, in the future regarding Apple, I tend not to cover leaks anyway, or kind of rumours. I tend not to cover speculation on this channel. I like to keep my reporting fact-based, so that I know that what I'm reporting is true. But just to be clear, I will not be, even if I do speculation for other companies at some point, I will not be doing any Apple speculation. This is due to Apple's recent actions regarding John Prosser, which, to be fair, were justified, but I will not be doing any actions regarding that. So, Apple went into WWDC 2025 in a bit of a conundrum. Last year, they showed off Apple Intelligence, and it turned out that most of the features that they demoed weren't working at the time of the demo. So, the demo was essentially all fake, because none of it actually worked, and we saw that with the rollout. Most of the features haven't been rolled out. They did address that. They said, look, it's not where we want it, we'll get it to you soon, and that was basically it. They've now expanded Apple Intelligence to cover a lot more stuff. No surprise there, every company is kind of doing the same, to be fair, so I don't blame them. But they've done some pretty big changes to their software. Firstly, all iOS software is now at the same version number. So it is all the respective OS 26. So iOS 26, iPadOS 26. And the reason they give for it being the 2026 version, not the 2025 version, does make sense. It's the version that you're seeing in the new year with. So you don't want it to sound outdated before you even start using it. To me, fair enough, cars do the same thing, I don't really have an issue with it. So yeah, I guess fair enough for them. So they've done this massive liquid glass thing, which looks awesome in the latest beta, but they had some issues in the first couple of betas, I'll be honest. It wasn't perfect in the first few betas, which of course it's not going to be. It's a developed beta. The whole point is to see what people say, they'll refine it, they'll change it, etc, etc. There was a bit of a disagreement over whether or not people needed to say that it was bad originally or not, but at the end of the day, Apple listened to feedback very clearly, and they've adjusted it to a level that I think it looks pretty impressive at, I'm not going to lie. It'll be interesting to see if Android decides to follow this, or if Android decides to kind of stay with the faithfulness that they're doing, which I'll talk about a bit later. But yeah, so we've got just new 26 stuff basically. The biggest thing is that they all have liquid glass. Spotlight has had a very nice upgrade on macOS. It's basically command palette on Windows. You have this thing called command palette if you install PowerToys. lots of stuff you have to get through to get it, but once you've got it, it's extremely impressive. And it basically, Windows' best search, but was in line with Spotlight on absolute steroids. Like, it is impressive how well they have managed. It is impressive how well they have managed to just make it do everything. It does everything for you. I don't think there's anything it can't do, and I just find it incredibly fascinating to see how they've just finally made Spotlight. They have shone Spotlight on Spotlight. I don't have any other way to phrase it really. It's kind of the best thing in macOS Tahoe 26, in my opinion, and I just think BOS looks amazing, especially at the current state it's at now, compared to where it started in first beta. Also, iPadOS 26 is shockingly impressive for an iPadOS update. All of a sudden, we've gone from this, is the iPad a computer, is it not a computer, to the iPad's a computer. I don't think you can see the iPad is not a computer. It has freeform windows, it has split screen, drag and drop between those split windows. It's really sleek, it works really well from what I've seen. I haven't been able to go hands-on with it. I don't have an iPad or a device I can test it on, but again, it looks good. It gives people the features they've been asking for and kind of what iPadOS has needed. It can also do background tasks now. So if you're, say, rendering a video in Final Cut on your iPad, you can exit Final Cut and you can go to watch a YouTube video or do some other work you need to do while you wait for your video to be done, which I think is really good because it just means that you can do stuff simultaneously and the iPad will no longer try to stop you from doing that. Again, lending more to the idea that the iPad is actually a computer. If we could just get side loading, I would actually be willing to call it a computer. I know it has it in the EU to an extent, but if we could get full on side loading, that would be amazing to see. However, you know, that's a dream that I don't think will ever happen. So that's kind of everything for WWDC that I'm really going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about it too much because it was a while ago. And so next we will talk about Google I/O. Google I/O is interesting because of how they do things. It's not consumer centric in a way that WWDC is. So I'm just going to read headlines either from The Verge. I'll put a link in the description to The Verge's article on things. But basically, AI mode for search is being rolled out across the US. I believe it's now actually planned in India since then, at least in part. So I'm sure it will probably be across the rest of the world soon. Project Starline, their really impressive video conferencing system that makes you feel like you're in the same room, is now called Google Beam. Is going to launch on a HP branded device using a light-filled display and 6 cameras, so it's a 3D image of the person you're chatting with on a video call. And multiple companies have said they will add HP to Google Beam devices to their offices, so it's going to be very interesting to see how this technology goes in terms of video calls. It could be a new era for it. Google's AI text image generator has been upgraded, and so has their AI video generator. VO3 is impressive with the way it syncs the audio to what's happening in the video. I think it's very impressive. They've also introduced a new AI filmmaking app called Flow. It uses VO, Imogen, and Gemini to create 8-second AI-generated video clips based on text prompts and/or images. Comes with a scene builder tool to stitch clips together and create longer AI videos. It's impressive. New enhanced reasoning mode for Gemini 2.5 Pro, just making it, better overall for using 2.5 Pro with DeepThink. Project Aura, Google's upcoming Android XR glasses that are created by Xreal. One of the first ones we've seen the physical prototype of. It looks amazing. It looks really impressive. if they manage to pull off Project Aura, then it's going to be very interesting. Now, we don't know quite when they'll be coming out, but we're hoping to see them within the next year. Project Astra was also mentioned again, is getting more proactive so it can do stuff on your behalf even if you don't explicitly ask it to, basically. So it just chooses to speak based on what it's seeing, and it can point out mistakes in your homework and stuff. Gemini is coming to Google Chrome, so if you're a Chrome user on Windows or macOS, look for, actually definitely on Windows, I'm not sure about macOS, definitely look for a button in the toolbar for Gemini, and you'll also be able to access it with a keyboard shortcut in the background. So anyone who wanted Gemini on computer, you will have it soon. It's going to Pro and Ultra subscribers first. Whether or not it will expand, I'm not sure. But I hope to see it happen, but we'll see. Gemini is able to summarize information and navigate sites on people's behalf, and there will possibly be the possibility for Gemini to work across tabs later this year. They also released a new Ultra plan, which costs $250 a month, so that's fun. Search Live is an interesting feature, but kind of like Google Lens, which there's kind of Google Lens and Gemini Live mixed together, where basically Gemini can use what it's seeing to tell you information. It's useful, to be fair. I've used it before. It works well. And Google have also revealed a tool called Stitch, which generates interfaces as well for apps. Now, let's stop talking there for a bit and let's talk a little bit about Android. Now, Android was announced weirdly this time. It was announced before Google I/O in a separate video called The Android Show. They did a whole video dedicated to Android 16's update, so that it wouldn't take time at I/O. It was a very interesting way for them to do it. They don't normally do this. It's the first time for this format. I liked it, because I was able to just focus on the Android improvements that I've been wanting to see for a while. Obviously, most of these improvements you won't see on your phone unless you have a Pixel, but something you will definitely see is Google's new desktop mode. So Google have worked directly with Samsung to take the foundation that Samsung built with DeX and morph it into something that can work across all Android devices and all Android skins. So it's now built into Android 16 as a basic feature, and should in theory start rolling out to devices. Obviously the device will need to have USB on-the-go capability or some other way to stream that desktop mode connection, but we'll see what Google does to possibly allow that in the future as it happens. As for kind of what this means for the future in terms of Chrome OS, people were asking it, and Google have said they will be merging Android and Chrome OS. So now instead of Google having two operating systems they have to maintain, one for desktop, one for phones, they are going to merge. This isn't a big surprise. Chrome OS is built upon the Android Linux kernel, so it will probably go more the Android side than it will stay the Chrome OS side, I'd assume. We don't know that for certain though, we'll have to wait and see what they do. But to say this isn't a surprise is definitely true. I've seen this coming for about a year. We've seen small inklings of things happening on both sides to kind of line the platforms up so they can merge into one for future updates. So don't be surprised if Chrome OS gets rebranded to Android Desktop or something and it's officially released in the future, because that may well end up happening sooner rather than later. So that is most of the news for today. The next segment will be entirely focusing on the Online Safety Act and why I would be concerned with the fact that it exists on a purely technological basis. So if you don't really want to listen to anything about the Online Safety Act in the UK, feel free to skip it. that's the last thing I'm going to talk about today. So if you are stopping here, thank you for listening, but I do hope you continue listening. The Online Safety Act. We're not talking policy, we're not talking anything apart from technology here, just to be clear. So with the Online Safety Act has come a new requirement that to see content that's typically rated adult content, you have to give over your identity. Now that does also unfortunately come with the caveat that it includes things like mental health issues and stuff related to that. Now requires you to give over your identity on lots of platforms, including Reddit. I will say Reddit as an example, and Blue Sky and Twitter. Lots of this stuff is now requiring an identity to be proven. So with that comes challenges with how to verify the identity. And the most common way for the company to do it is to use a third-party company. So let's just go through an analogy. Person A goes to company A. They say to company A, hey, I want to see this content. Company A goes, hang on, are you over 18? Then company A contacts ID Company 1 and says, hey ID Company 1, check person A's information. Person A gives ID Company 1 either a video of himself that then needs to estimate person A's age, or person A's ID is given to ID Company 1. ID Company 1 then comes back to Company A and says, hey, checks out, they're all good to go ahead. Or if they're not, no, sorry, too young. And that's that. Person A can then go to Company B, run into the same issue. Are they old enough is asked, but this time Company B sends them to ID Company number 2. So that's the second identity company. And ID Company 2 then grabs the same information from Person A. So now 2 companies are holding the data. And this can repeat and repeat and repeat. That's where the biggest issue lies. It's in the simple fact that there is a technology-based issue with what's available here. So all of a sudden, there's multiple new attack vectors to get data off people. That's the biggest technology-related issue I can find in relation to this. Again, I'm not speaking to how I feel about the law itself. This is a technology channel, and I want to keep it that way. But, in my opinion, things like this possibly being locked behind things like mental health resources, possibly being locked behind the age gate, can be a hindrance to people who are underage, because naturally they still need to be able to access. They should have access to some of these resources. But I can also see why they may not want them to have access to said resources. But regardless of this, unfortunately, as this was announced in the UK, the T-App got hacked. For those of you unaware of what the T-App is, it's an app for women to talk about the person they're dating. And they can say, hey, this person has X or Y, right? You just say what the person's like. And it's kind of like just to give you an idea, it's kind of like a technological way of saying to people, hey, I went on a date with this guy, blah blah blah, right? And instead of doing it person to person, so that more people can be aware of more things. Doesn't sound like a bad idea, except there's one issue, which is that people have to verify that they are a woman. Obviously, you don't want, you need that to be verifiable. So the way they did it was by using ID checks. They stored those IDs in a Dropbox, and that Dropbox ended up being publicly accessible. So someone downloaded the file from the Dropbox, and the IDs have now been leaked. That's a small issue, because now all of their locations, all of the people that use this app, their locations have been revealed, their IDs have been revealed, possibly leading to identity theft in the future. So this basically means that it wasn't stored securely, and now their data is at risk. And in the UK, there's now a similar issue where multiple companies will have the ability to see your ID and say, store that information. Which means that said information can be hacked and leaked in the future. Will it? We don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But that possibility does exist. So that is everything for today. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast episode. It's nice to be back doing podcasts again. It's been a while. I haven't done one since September. I've had another long break, unfortunately. It's just university. Once again, life just gets in the way. I would like to say I hope it's the last time, but we will have to wait and see on that. But for now, my name's been Luke. This is Untitled Chapter, and I will see you next week.